Welcome back to Saturday Agenda. I'm Chris Kenny. You can follow me on Twitter if you like. You should see it on the screen there, at Chris K. Kenny at Twitter. Get on board. It's a good way to keep in touch with what's happening around the world and get involved in debates with all kinds of people in the political world. Now, just before we go to our panel now, I want to talk about what our political leaders tried to do this week. Julia Gillard, firstly, the Prime Minister who's under pressure, tried to shift the debate very much to the economic area, the Australian economy and its standing in the world. So she gave a major speech this week, and here's some of it.
As Australians see the problems of Europe, we see the importance of fiscal discipline. And as Australians increasingly come to know that our own fundamentals are strong by comparison, we know that we would not change places with any economy in the world.
So that's Julia Gillard trying to switch the debate to the economy, seen as a strong point for the Labor Party, certainly by Julia Gillard. Tony Abbott, on the other hand, is trying to project a more positive image after being dubbed Captain Negative and Dr No. So he gave a major speech at the National Press Club in Canberra.
The best way to help our country right now would be to change the government. And the best way to change the government would be to give the people their choice at an election. Changing the government, of course, is but a means to an end, to bring out the best in our people and in our nation.
So that's Tony Abbott. He wants to get rid of the government, but he wants to get rid of it for positive reasons. Joining me now to discuss these are our Liberal and Labor senators. Joining us from Perth is Senator Matthias Cormann from the Liberal Party. And here with me in the studio is Senator Matt Thistlethwaite from the Labor Party.
Morning, Chris.
Morning, Matt. I want to go to Matthias first, the Liberal Party, the economic debate. Julia Gillard has a very strong point here, doesn't she, that the economic fundamentals for Australia are very good. Low interest rates, low unemployment rates, in global terms a low net debt position. Of course, our growth prospects are quite good. A strong point for the government.
Well, Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd before her have spent the last 4 years trading off the back of the strong performance and the strong economic and fiscal policy achievements of the Howard Costello government. And of course, they can't keep doing it. And things are starting to catch up with them. You just got to remember that this is a government which inherited a $20 billion surplus and turned it into $167 billion worth of accumulated deficits. They inherited a positive net asset position of $70 billion and turned it into $133 billion net debt position. Now, if you look at the challenges around the world, at the IMF data and some of the recommendations that come out in relation to countries overseas in Europe and the US, it is all about the fact that they've been spending too much, they've been spending beyond their means, and the debt position is out of control. And of course, the Gillard-Swan government is going in exactly that same direction.
Senator Cormann, they did, of course, get the country successfully through the GFC, though, and now you're running an argument that we should cut government spending in Australia and cut taxes. Yet the Tony Abbott opposition has a policy to increase a levy on big business so that they can spend more on a very generous parental leave program. Isn't that completely counter to what your main economic arguments are?
Well, our policy is to cut taxes. We'll scrap the carbon tax, we'll scrap the mining tax, we'll deliver a lower personal income tax.
But you'll add a new levy to fund parental leave, an extra parental leave scheme.
Taxes, the taxes under the coalition will be lower than they are or they would be under the Labor government. And of course, and we will be cutting spending, and we will be reducing Labor's red tape, and we will be improving productivity. You see, the problem that we've got, and I mean, in 2011, not a single new job was created in Australia. Things are starting to catch up with this Labor government. Come 1 July, there will be the carbon tax, which will make it more expensive to do business in Australia at the worst time, as we're facing serious challenges internationally, which will make us less competitive internationally, which will cost jobs. Bill Shorten, a couple of weeks ago, has already said that unemployment is heading for 6%, when only in December the mid-year economic and fiscal overview said it would be 5.5%. So what does that mean for the budget surplus in 2012-13? Look, I mean, this is a government which has got their bad economic and fiscal management catching up with them, and really it is long. I mean, it is real time now to have a change of government so that we can deliver a better government for Australia.
All right, Matt Thistlethwaite, you've heard all that. Now, you're arguing, and your Prime Minister's arguing, that the economy is your strong point. You need to get the Liberal Party on the defensive on the economy.
Well, that's right. We've got one of the best performing economies in the world, and if the Liberal Party is elected to government, they will destroy our economic record. You only have to look at what's happened in New South Wales over the course of the last week for a preview of what a Liberal government federally will be like. They left 700 disabled school kids stranded without a bus to get to school on Monday. Then later in the week, we saw
New South Wales if you wanted to spruik the Labor
Then later
Party's
in the week,
record.
we saw Prue Goward cutting $200 from the allowance for foster parents in this country. Now, there's some cuts in New South Wales. They're planning $70 billion worth of cuts at a federal level. You can't do that without destroying the welfare of Australian families, and that is what the Liberal Party will do.
All right, let's get to this caucus meeting in Canberra tomorrow. Leadership is going to be all the discussion behind the scenes is going to be leadership right now. You've got cabinet ministers threatening to quit cabinet if Kevin Rudd comes back. Just how dire is this situation for you?
Well, tomorrow is a planning session, and all good organisations plan, Chris. You see it in corporations, in community organisations. That's what we'll be doing tomorrow. There are a number of challenges.
Who's talking to you about leadership now?
Well, I think it's the significant point is the fact that over the course of the last week, the only phone calls that I've received about the leadership are from journalists. We're getting on with the job. You know, I spent most of this week on the phone.
You must be out of the loop,
I spent most of this week on the phone talking to branch members and party members and members of the community up around Moree and Narrabri about the floods and how we can assist them and what the government's doing to assist them. They're my priorities, and that's what I'm working on, and most MPs are.
You haven't even had a call from the Prime Minister or one of her supporters trying to make sure you're hanging tough?
No, I haven't. We're getting on with the job. We are getting on with the job. This is a good government. We are delivering for the people of Australia, and we've got a good, strong economic record, and we can't risk the economy being destroyed and Australia moving back into the past by a Liberal government. And that's what we're going to be focusing on over the course of the next year, and that's what we're going to be planning, how we work together.
Well, I think people watching this want the government to focus on the economy and running the country, and all they're seeing is reading in the papers cabinet ministers threatening to quit if Rudd comes back, Rudd not ruling out a leadership spill, Simon Crean and Nicola Roxon ticking him off. I mean, how are you going to focus on the things that matter?
Look, I don't know who's making those claims, but what I do know is that Australia's one of the best countries in the world to live in at the moment, a strong economy, a great safety net in workplaces, in other areas. We're getting on with the job, and we can't risk going back to a Liberal government.
Matthias Cormann, in 25 words or less, what are we going to see from the opposition in Parliament next week?
Well, I mean, we'll continue to do what we've been doing for the last 4 years, that is hold a bad government to account and continue to present our alternatives for better government for Australia.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Senator Matthias Cormann from Perth, and with me in the studio, Senator Matt Thistlethwaite. Thanks for joining us again, our regular guests on the political panel on Saturday Agenda, as we go into a new parliamentary year starting this week with polls at record lows for the Labor Party, leadership turmoil being discussed, the government trying to get the debate onto the economy. It's going to be another rocky year ahead. See you next week.